Hello Penguinauds, I'm the Video Penguin and welcome back to Fall of Kerbin World War II era. Today I'm going to be showing you some of the ships I've been working on, and no, that doesn't include my submarine because the submarine is a boat and not a ship, and also I haven't finished it and you guys are sort of starting to riot in the comments, so I thought I'd just get this video done. Just so you know, Fall of Kerbin should be starting in about a week or so. Tape starts to finish all his ships, and I sort of have started to tweak some stuff, you know, get the mods working or whatever, and set up a couple more bases. I'm sorry this is taking such a long time. Ships take a long time to build, and life has been really hectic for me recently. I actually went to see Chris Hadfield yesterday, though. That was pretty amazing. Got a signed copy of his book. Anyway, on to the actual focus of today's video. Ships! So, ships are changing quite a lot in the World War II era compared to the World War I era. The main one is the fact that they now have fire control radar, which means they can fire beyond 5 kilometers. It's a bit glitchy though, and it also causes the game to lag quite a bit. So instead, Tape and I have just agreed to set the visual range on ships to 10 kilometers. It works just as well, and you know, the fire control radar, like, points the guns at them, but then isn't fire, and it's unreliable. So, you know, as long as a ship is fitted with fire control radar, we're just increasing the visual range to 10 kilometers. It just makes things easier. Anyway, so instead of just being restricted to destroyers, cruisers, and battleships, and of course aircraft carriers and submarines, now we've changed the rules up a little bit. So you can now launch 5 coastal patrol craft. I haven't actually built one because I don't think they're going to be particularly useful, but Tape expressed a bit of an interest in them. They're not built with World War II Warships parts, and they can move 100 kilometers a turn, but they have to stay 10 kilometers from the shore. They can only have a single 30mm flak gun and 2 torpedoes. They're basically just tanks on water. That is essentially all they are. I probably won't be using them, but they could be exceptionally useful with the fact they can be launched from forward operating bases. So they might be useful for making landings, but yeah, I'm not really going to be using them. They are, however, the only naval unit that can interact and attack ground units. The rest of our naval units we're just restricting. I know coastal bombardment was a thing in World War II. I'm getting so many people saying, "Ah, historical accuracy, BD." No, I don't care. It's Kerbal Space Program. People are like, "Oh, you should have trench warfare. That's disgrace." No, you can't. You can't do it. Like, guys, anyway, it's Kerbal Space Program, guys. There are limitations, so we're just not allowing coastal bombardment just to make it fair. Although you can build coastal emplacements now to stop someone just waltzing into your base and taking it. But yeah, so that's what they are, but I probably won't be using them. You got level 4 launches, and that includes submarines and now frigates. So these essentially have replaced the old destroyers. They can only have 4 guns of up to 5 inches in caliber. We've repurposed the old Rockhopper class and just slightly modified it. They can't carry torpedoes, but they can have an active sonar array, and they can have depth charges. So these are basically our submarine hunting machines. So level 4 launches submarines and frigates, which can be used to hunt submarines. So that can sort of balance them out. We're going to be using these as sort of convoy escort ships. So they're going to be escorting our merchant ships, mainly just because you can launch so many of them and they're relatively decent. And of course, they defend against submarines, which are probably the biggest threat to merchant ships besides aircraft carriers and naval aircraft. Anyway, onto our destroyer. This is the only ship here that I'm not actually entirely happy with. I might change it. I'm not entirely sure I'm happy with the way it looks. But it does the job. Anyway, destroyers can have up to 6 5-inch guns now. They can have 15 torpedoes. I have 8 torpedoes and 2 launchers, but these are the Japanese long lance torpedoes. They're much better than the Mark 15 torpedoes that we were using before. They can also have depth charges and an active sonar array, but since my frigate's going to be doing that, I didn't really want to waste any deck space, so we don't have an active sonar array or depth charges. I don't think we really need them. Probably wouldn't even be using many of these destroyers. Like, honestly, frigates, you can launch a lot of them and they're great, and then you've got cruisers, so you might as well just launch, you know, cruisers. Maybe we might launch some destroyers for some torpedo attacks against Tape's capital ships, but in the long run, I don't know whether we'll actually be using all that many of them. They can also have 2 flak guns, so we just got 2 of these 20mm guns. Just up on the bridge to defend against, sort of light defense against aircraft attack, which aircraft are now a very, very scary enemy. And these ships now, the Rockhopper, it can't take anywhere near as many hits as it used to be able to. I've changed the way the armor works entirely, so they take damage in a much more realistic fashion. So small ships like the Rockhopper take a broadside from a battleship, they can't survive it anymore because that was ridiculous. Take a broadside from a battleship, it's dead. Battleship takes a broadside from a battleship, it can probably survive. So I've rebalanced the way the armor works, so that, you know, smaller armor panels take less damage, bigger armor panels take more damage, and such, because the way it was balanced, I love World War II warships, but it's not not a completed mod by any stretch of the imagination, so we've tweaked it to high heaven. Anyway, this was probably the second most requested ship for me to make, especially by a particularly loud person in the comments called Crawford. I finally made your Atlanta class. Be happy, okay? I didn't have a light cruiser in the World War I era because I didn't really need one, because we were only really destroying enemy ships. Aircraft did not pose a big threat to our ships. That's changed now. Aircraft pose a massive threat, especially now that aircraft carriers are becoming a big thing. We need a good, reliable anti-aircraft defense. So I've built, this is a loose sort of version of the USS Atlanta. It's missing 2 extra gun turrets, but this is as many guns as we can actually get onto it. And these are these 5-inch twin mount naval guns. And these have got a multi-purpose armament. So they're pretty good against ships. They're very good against destroyers, just for the sheer rate of fire that they have. Not particularly great against heavy cruisers or pretty much anything bigger, but the multi-purpose armament is great against enemy aircraft. Get within 5 kilometers, you're dead. Get within 2 kilometers somehow, and yeah, these 20 mils are just going to shred you alive. This is essentially just an anti-aircraft cruiser. It's kind of vulnerable to heavy cruisers and larger ships, and just other ships in general, really, but we can hopefully defend against that with our next ship, which is the heavy cruiser, our Galapagos class. Now this has got completely the opposite set of problems. So this actually uses 7-inch guns, which you're only supposed to have 9 of them. No, not 9 of them, 11 of them, sorry. But the thing is, these 7-inch guns come in triple mounts. So I said to Tape, I can only have 12. You know, I have to have them in triple mounts, so I'm going to have 12. Is it okay if I have an extra barrel if I halve the anti-aircraft armament? And that's not in the rules or whatever, but Tape said, yeah, that's fine. That sounds balanced. So this is great against enemy ships. These 7-inch guns are actually really fast firing, really accurate, and with the just sheer broadside that you can put down, this is a very deadly ship. It can take on battleships one-on-one if it manages to close the distance. But oh my god, is it susceptible to aircraft. Okay, it's got 6 of these 40mm Bofors cannons, which are decent, yeah, but against a dedicated a load of torpedo bombers, or even worse, dive bombers, yeah, it just cannot stand up to them. Which is why our heavy cruisers and our light cruisers are going to be marching around in pairs. So whenever we launch a light cruiser, it's going to be paired with a heavy cruiser. Heavy cruiser is going to be paired with a light cruiser. That means we can protect against enemy ships, and we can also protect against enemy small ships and aircraft. I think these are actually a really deadly combination. Light cruisers and heavy cruisers, of course, take up the same launch spots. You can only launch 2 of these a turn, so we can launch 1 light cruiser and 1 heavy cruiser. And probably maybe the next time we launch a carrier, and there you go, you have a carrier group. So we'll probably have a couple of carrier groups to sort of block off certain parts of the ACS. We might have a couple down in the south of the ACS, so you can see at the top here. We might have one in the north of the ACS to try and sort of block off this large lagoon sort of place and cut off Osiris Fortress. We could also have one down in the south by the island chain. You know, carrier groups are going to be very, very versatile because, of course, aircraft carriers are now going to play a massive role in World War II. I know we could have had them in World War I, but aircraft just really weren't good enough to stand up to ships, but all that has changed. So we've implemented a load of new rules for aircraft carriers. You can launch 2 of these a turn, by the way. I know they're massive, but if you could only launch 1, then we'd probably never use them. Likewise, in World War I we'd use them because you had to populate them with aircraft from your air launchers, which meant they were extremely expensive because you had to invest aircraft and you had to invest ship launches, and it just wasn't worth it for how effective they are. So in World War II, we've changed it up. So aircraft carriers actually launch with aircraft, either 3 attackers or 5 carrier fighters. And you might be thinking, Betty, that means you can have a crazy air force. You can just launch 1 billion carriers and just overwhelm Tape with just sheer numbers. That is true. However, we've imposed some limitations. So a carrier aircraft can only be used much like the main guns of other ships, but they have a 50-kilometer range. So you've got a maximum of 50-kilometer range, and they can only be used to attack enemy ships or enemy carrier aircraft. Of course, the carrier aircraft can defend against other aircraft actually attacking, but they cannot be used to attack enemy ground units. They can only be used against enemy ships, and they have a 50-kilometer range. The aircraft can also only be replenished when it returns to port, so basically they just act like the main guns of any other ship, just they have a 50-kilometer range, and they're much easier to destroy. And the way we sort of got around the problem of the aircraft actually exploding on the deck when you load in is I've actually attached them to the deck using a load of these tiny little tweak-scaled advanced grabbing units, so you can't really see them, and I've just tied everything to an action group. So all I have to do is press 0 and they'll take off. My carrier fighter is based off of, well, I guess it's kind of appropriate for the action group, the A6M0, the Japanese aircraft carrier-based fighter, which is basically untouchable at the beginning of World War II. It's good. It's amazing at low altitudes when it comes to climb rate and turn speed, which is kind of what we need it for, because we want to be defending against enemy torpedo bombers and dive bombers, which aren't going to be flying super high up. Against like high up enemy bombers, we've just got these 3-inch naval guns, and then we have the I didn't actually say the name. This is the A6 Tern, and this is the A5 Pelican. This was sort of originally going to be based off of something like the B5N maybe, but in the end I couldn't be bothered. I just sort of modified a KT2 Vulture. I'm going to swap out this engine because it's far too overpowered. I'll talk to Tape about it. But yeah, so these are just designed to be able to take off from my carrier, so they're very lightweight. They're not exceptional. But I don't know, like the A6 is still a pretty damn good aircraft just from how light and how maneuverable it is, but it certainly can't compare to the Falcon. And as I said, if I tied them all to an action group, so all I have to do is press 0. It's lagging quite a lot just from the sheer amount of ships and parts that are in this area. But all I have to do is press that button and their engines activate, their pilots activate, their gears extends, and they take off. That was at a weird angle, so the Pelican's taking off to the side, and I hope this doesn't hit the control tower. Please don't hit the control tower, please. No, I think it's alright. Yeah, we're okay. Pelican, bit of a shaky takeoff, but it's probably okay. A lot of people have been telling us to get carrier accessories and stuff, but the problem with all the carrier mods is they're all for 1.2, and we're on 1.1.2, so we can't get any of those. But this works relatively well, as long as the Pelican's in the air. So this works relatively well. The turn can take off. It's lagging quite a bit, so the AI pilot starts to sort of misbehave a little bit. So I think the Pelican's falling out of the sky. Please don't fall out of the sky, Pelican. Please? No, it's falling out of the sky. Yeah, I need to change the way the AI is set up. It's kind of glitchy at the moment. I've turned off, I've got unbreakable joints on at the moment. No crash damage, which is why it sort of bounced off the deck. I need to mess with the AI pilot quite a bit, and it's also just misbehaving because it's lagging quite a bit, so it's, yeah. But anyway, that's aircraft carriers. They're going to play a massive role in World War II, and we'll almost certainly, I think Tape and I said we're going to each start with one aircraft carrier that we don't have to launch right at the beginning, just get the ball rolling. So we'll start with an aircraft carrier, and we might launch a heavy cruiser or a light cruiser, build a carrier group, and maybe use that to invade Osiris Fortress. I don't know. We'll see. The rules are finished now, by the way, so they'll be in the description. I know a lot of you have been asking for the rules. Don't worry, they're finished. They'll be in the rules, in the description from now on. Anyway, last but not least, we have the King-class battleship. In World War I, battleships were okay, but they didn't really come into their own because they were limited by 5 kilometers range, and they both just crashed. Hopefully they'll perform a little bit better than that. Nothing wrong with the aircraft, it's just the AI pilot I've been messing with a little bit too much. We'll just turn those off. There you go. You guys have a little break. Anyway, so now we have the fire control radar. Battleships are much better, and with editing all the armor, a broadside from this battleship can take out a ship in one salvo. We're using 9 of these Italian 15-inch guns because we can now launch. We can have 8 16-inch guns, so that means I can have 9 15-inch guns. I think Tape's going for USS Iowa guns, 16-inch guns, but I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to check on that. But yeah, this thing's pretty damn powerful. The rate of fire on these guns isn't amazing, but you only really need to hit the enemy once, and they're gonna be dead because these are very powerful guns. They're actually pretty damn accurate as well, and the main thing is that the turrets actually turn very quickly. The problem I found with British guns on the old King class was that they turned painfully slowly, so something could close to like 3 kilometers and launch torpedoes before you even had your guns trained on it. We've gone with the same anti-aircraft armament. It's basically the same as it was before, just with fire control radar and, of course, some 15-inch guns. Well, a lot more 15-inch guns than it had before. But anyway, that pretty much concludes the sort of rundown of all our ships. I think we're going to have a couple of little scenarios to show off the might of my naval air force. Well, obviously not shown accurately here, and also our ships. So we'll have a couple of little scenarios, and hopefully we can get the naval aircraft to work a little bit better than they just did. Well, we've seen ships fighting ships quite a few times in World War One, so I just thought we'd show you something new, a carrier-based attack on another ship. So our target here is actually our Galapagos class. So as I said, its anti-aircraft armament is very, very poor, and these aircraft, these are our naval bombers. They do have an overpowered engine. I'll talk it over with tape. Maybe we'll keep the overpowered engine because otherwise they might not be able to take off from the carrier. We'll have a chat about it. But anyway, so the aircraft we're flying has an aerial drop torpedo because the guard mode unfortunately can't use them, so we have to use them ourselves. And then our two wingmen are carrying 1,600-pound armor-piercing bombs. These things pack a hell of a punch. They're designed to take out battleships. So a single heavy cruiser does not have enough armor to withstand one of them. What they do is they break straight through the deck armor and they'll go right down to the center of the ship and then they'll explode. So they're really dangerous bombs, but you do need to get quite a bit closer. So a torpedo, you need to be quite low to the ground, but you can drop them and fly away. You can be at a relative distance. We agreed at about 3 kilometers as a distance, so you have to close. You have to brave some anti-aircraft fire before you drop it, but then you can basically turn around and GTFO, whereas the with the bomb, it's far less accurate. So with the torpedo, you just drop it and then it can't really miss because our ships can't move. But with a bomb, obviously it's less accurate, but also they do far more damage if they manage to hit. So I guess it's a bit of a trade-off. Torpedoes, they can't be destroyed anymore, same with bombs, they can't be blown out of the sky or the water. But deck guns do have a habit of shooting at torpedoes when they're in the water and sort of stopping them moving and sort of messing with them. So I don't know how Tape and I are going to sort out that. It's a little annoying. I've been talking with Tetrids trying to see if there's a way to get the guard mode to stop shooting at bombs and torpedoes, but we just can't find one. We've set the guard mode to shoot vessels and not missiles, but it keeps insisting on shooting at missiles, so I'm not entirely sure how to get around that. If anyone has any ideas in the comments, then they would be more than welcome. But anyway, so these things have got out to altitude exceptionally quickly, kind of overpowered engines again, but I don't know. It might make things more fast-paced, so we might just keep the overpowered engines. There's one in the back. I didn't set the steer dampener to high enough, so it's sort of doing little aileron. No, it's not aileron. No, it's barrel roll. It's actually doing barrel rolls behind us. The proper barrel roll. There you go, not the one that Star Fox teaches you. But it's fine. It's still flying, and it's still keeping relative pace with us. So here we go. We're flying in above the Galapagos class. Now, as I said, the anti-aircraft armament on this thing is very, very bad. It hasn't got guns with a range of more than about 4.5 kilometers, those 40 mils. So we're just flying right over, and as soon as we get within range, we're going to release our wingmen, and then we're going to dive straight down, because of course you can't drop a torpedo from an altitude of 4 kilometers. You need to dive down and drop it when you're just above the water. So we're just diving down. We do need to actually cut our engine here. This engine has a max speed of about 200 meters per second, so I guess it's not too overpowered actually. You know, you've got a max speed, it just throttles up and it's very high acceleration. But there you go, our engine cuts out. We're diving in. Here we go. So we're just trying to line up a torpedo launch on this thing. I probably could have launched this a little later actually. What with how the guns were behaving. If you drop it too late, then when it hits the water, it will sink down quite a way, and then before it can actually get back up to its cruise depth, it'll go underneath the ship. But there you go. As you can see, the deck gun's just shooting straight for the torpedoes. So we really kind of need a way to fix that. But there we go, so the torpedo is heading straight for the Galapagos class. It hasn't actually decided to train its guns on the aircraft, which is probably a big mistake. You see, it's still shooting at that torpedo. Yeah, it sort of stops it in the water. It's a little bit weird, but we need some way to get around that. But anyway, our other aircraft, our wingmen, are lining up with their armor-piercing bombs, and, well, it's not going to be able to stop these with its guns. Here we go, lining up the bomb. This is the guard mode, by the way, not me. And there it goes! Drops an armor-piercing bomb straight down the Galapagos class, and then I get the other aircraft to follow me around and try and get them to pull back, try and get out of the range of its guns, just in case that, well, for when that torpedo hits, it's going to certainly change its attention to our aircraft and not that little torpedo. But without any further ado, here we go. The bomb's dropping straight towards it. And it looks good. It looks good. And there it goes. Let's see how much damage that did. Oh, and it's just detonated the magazine. The whole ship's gone up. And there you have it. That's what 1,600-pound armor-piercing bombs do to heavy cruisers. We're not going to have any more scenarios because, I mean, you've seen ships shooting other ships a million times in World War One. Obviously, of course, we've got new ships and everything, so it's a little different, but I think we're going to save that for when Fall of Kerbin actually starts again for real. It should start soon. It'll start maybe next week. Tape starts to finish his ships and you have to do some little tweaking and stuff, but it should start relatively soon, and I hope this has got you relatively excited, along with the tank video and the aircraft video, which if you haven't seen, I highly suggest you go check out. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you're as excited for the World War II era as myself and Tape are, and I will see you all next time.